So here we go. On the date of March 31st, 2022, the New York Post released an article titled California Task Force Votes to Limit Reparations to Slave Descendants. So they voted to limit reparations to slave descendants? What does this mean exactly? We'll be covering this and more here in a minute. Look, 100 years after 100 years, they done lied to us about this and that. Told us all we from Africa and made fiction characters turn into facts. Harriet Tubman, then it was Nat. Knowing goddamn well that trick was capped. My wife and I wrote a book about it, and it's book with knowledge, evidence, and fact. My other book got them haters shook, cause it's helping my people take a closer look at their backgrounds in the background, showing my people where they supposed to look, showing my people where to get it from, where to hit it from, all sorts of angles. When it comes to this research, you must please first don't trust strangers. Finding out all on your own is what I highly recommend and suggest. And if you're looking for uncensored content by me, I highly recommend you the best, which is my website at the link you see just across the screen. Don't let it miss you. I make it simple. I double down on that black and white. It's too official. OCO, everyone.
OCO.
So this was brought to my wife and I's attention, and we wanted to go over it because there's a few things that we want to talk about here. So let's start off with this article. According to the New York Post, it says that a California task force voted Tuesday to limit reparations to black families whose ancestors were in the U.S. in the 19th century, drawing criticism from others who support compensation regardless of lineage. So in other words, there are people out there that are upset, probably because of the fact that their lineage doesn't go that far back and they just got here recently. So continuing with the article, the task force voted 5-4 after hours of debate that at times became heated. A proposal within recommendations is expected to release by July 2023 before it could go before the state legislature for a vote. Lisa Holder, a task force member and a civil rights attorney, said the task force should continue to listen to the public's opinions while working with economists to carve out a plan, stating, quote, "We need to galvanize the base, and that is black people," she said. "We can't go into this reparations proposal without having all African Americans in California behind us." That sounds, as soon as I hear that, that sounds very political to me. Right after that, it says Governor Gavin Newsom signed legislation 2 years ago to give, quote, "special consideration to black Americans who are direct descendants of enslaved people." And speaking of special consideration, Hun, you said you had more on that topic?
Well, I wanted to look up the special consideration because I know that consideration could mean like a thought, or consideration is actually a form of payment. So I just wanted to look at that legislation, and I was able to pull up that exact bill that they're referencing in this article, which is Assembly Bill number 3121, Chapter 319. And this was actually published October 20th, 2020.
In which this task force was established in 2020.
Exactly. And this bill will require the task force to recommend, among other things, the form of compensation that should be awarded, the instrumentalities through which it should be awarded, and who should be eligible for compensation. But when I heard all of this coming directly from this bill, it goes back to what was stated in this article as saying they need to galvanize the base.
And that is black people. She
Exactly.
said we can't go into this reparations proposal without having all African Americans in California behind us.
That means they're still trying to figure out exactly who is the base and who should be included. Because when they say black people, whom exactly does that include? And when they say African Americans, whom exactly does that include? They're waiting for, or they're trying to add in East Africans, West Africans, and Caribbeans. But I've also noticed that they're accepting immigrants. So that opens this reparations up to a larger pool of people that may have never been affected by what they're trying to receive reparations for.
Well, that was the whole point about this vote, because according to this article on Tuesday's vote, they said some Black Californians, such as immigrants from East and West Africa and the Caribbean, would not be eligible for compensation. And then it says that means only a fraction of the state's 2.6 million Black residents will be able to benefit from the proposal. But
why is that an issue?
Why is what an issue?
Why would that be an issue if it's not available to those immigrants?
I think some immigrants state that they should get something just because they're Black and they live in California, because they really have no say-so when it comes to them being enslaved. They weren't enslaved, in North America, because that's what this is about. And once again, this is another proposal. This is not and I don't want people to get this twisted. This is not there's a bill and it's about to pass through the Senate and everything else. This is just a proposal. And they're still trying to figure out how the people are going to have to prove that they were descendants. See, this is another thing. People still going to have to be able to prove their ancestry, because it says right here, the task force also has to come up and approve a plan on how Black Californians will be able to prove their ancestry.
Something else that I noticed about this also was this isn't just about people being enslaved or descendants of enslavement. They're also adding in people that are being discriminated upon. So it's like they have to include discrimination in this because they really don't have a lot of information or a long list of slaves.
Right. You're not going to find any. And I agree with that. That's the reason why they said reparations. In the article, it says reparations could include assistance with buying homes, establishing businesses, grants to churches and organizations, and free college tuition. Yeah, that's not really benefiting us. I'm going to be honest with you. The reason why is because they're not making sense here. The issue that they're having is discrimination amongst us having equal rights as those same immigrants that came over here. What a large amount of people are going to find out is when they do their ancestry, they were already here. Now, what are they going to do with the people that were already here prior to these immigrants arriving here? What are you going to propose now? Is it just going to be, we're going to help them buy homes and establish businesses and grants for churches and and that's it?
That's what it's for. It's for the people coming over to help them further, not necessarily for the people that are here.
To go back to that, this has nothing to do with us. Once again, I mean, from what I see, this has nothing to do with us. They also state in the article, while Black residents make up about 6.5% of California's population, according to the U.S. Census data, Black men make up nearly 30% of the state's prison population. What about that? Are they going to get some opportunities to get out? I mean, because not every person in prison is a criminal. They could have been falsely accused. But as long as their siblings or relatives are able to buy a house and establish businesses, I'm going to tell you, let me explain something. They do make it hard for people to buy a home or establish a business based off of that person's credit and their credit history. Right? But the problem is that our people are not taught about establishing businesses, what to do to buy homes, or how to even build up their credit. They're just basing it off of word of mouth. How about programs that will allow them to be taught these things that will bring them up? They could benefit from that versus it being a proposal for some type of monetary gain. Because if you think about it, let's just say, for example, they said 2.6 million Black residents in California. Let's just say that the proposal does pass and turns out to be a bill. And the bill allows for compensation, monetary compensation for those residents. they're not going to know what to do with that type of money in order for it to pass on throughout their generations, for them to benefit from having some form of compensation to better themselves. The majority of the people won't know what to do. Once again, you're not going to the root of the problem. You're giving them money. Okay, they pay up all their bills, and then what? And then what? Spend it again? They just, it's set up or designed rather for us to just spend our money. I'm just saying, this proposal is not hitting everything. And then once again, to go back to this, the East and West Africans and the Caribbeans have no say-so in this. They weren't enslaved here, okay? And even that vote lets you know that they weren't enslaved here and just got here in the 20th and 21st century. They stated that as well. Actually, that was a Washington Times article that stated that. And it was actually up under a similar title called California Reparations Task Force Votes to Limit Compensation. I want to quickly read that. It said, those favoring a lineage approach said that a compensation and restitution plan based on genealogy as opposed to race has been or has the best chance of surviving a legal challenge. There's a reason for that. They also said that Black immigrants who chose to migrate to the US in the 20th and 21st centuries do not share the trauma of people who were kidnapped and enslaved. I'm telling you, one way or another, people are going to learn that other people, even those of South America, don't share the same stories as we do. Okay? This is going to expose it all when they do their genealogy right here.
But I really think something else is going on here, because something that they say a lot, several times within this information, within the bill itself and within the article, is that this task force is only there to recommend, recommend proposals, but it's based off of study. So they're still trying to examine and study the information, study what has happened to people, study slavery
in the U.S.
To study slavery in the U.S.
And you know what that is? That's H.R. 40, 1989. They've been studying. Oh my goodness! I'm telling people.
You brought that up before, and all of this stemmed back to. They brought this up as far as it's stemming back to the bill that was presented by John Conyers Jr.
That's him.
Which
H.R.
was
40.
H.R. 40. Yes.
Yep.
And so this bill just simply establishes the commission to study. And I'm trying to figure out how they're still doing studies, but yet they're teaching this curriculum to our children as if it has already happened and it truly existed. What is it to study if you're so sure about it?
Right. And you're proposing, once again, that all of our people went through slavery. Keep in mind, John Conyers put out that H.R. 40 in 1989. It's 2022. That's 33 years ago. So that's a whole generation ago. That's a problem. We still going over the same thing over and over again. That's why I said you guys got to stop looking to this government for a handout. When they know, okay, slavery happened, right? But slavery happened differently from what we were told. And that's why I always recommend you guys to do your own genealogy. They're not going to have a choice but to tell people to do their own genealogy. And guess what? Not only are East and West Africans not eligible, nor the Caribbeans or Caribbeans, neither are you. The reason why is because of how slavery went. Everybody thought that the slaves worked for free. See, and I'm telling you, that's going to expose it. That's not in every case, but that's in the majority of the people's cases. They were indentured servants. They were contracted employees, just like right now. So what you're doing is fighting for, what is it called in the employment realm right now? When an employee has a problem with the employer and they do a equal opportunity employment, I'm trying to think of the terminology here, but they put up a case against the employer and then it goes to a board in order for them to vote Listen to that. On who should be reprimanded or what should happen in that particular case. In most cases, the employee loses their job. So once again, you're going up against the employers. Were the government the employers? We can say yeah in certain cases because of how the transfer of ownership went. When they so-called abolished slavery, that meant they abolished slavery from happening from person to person. And then it changed over from person to business in 1863, 1865. And the big person or the big company that was in business, the big corporation, is the government. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. So it's going to fall back on the government. This is the reason why all they're going to do is tell you, oh, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it. They got the evidence right in front of them. How long? Are we going to wait a whole nother 30 years? And then another 30 years? And you going to still take a look at it? Like, go ahead.
They're actually not looking at the government themselves or the businesses themselves. They're actually going after information that's being held by these insurance companies. Because just like you said, like, I forgot what it's called also, would they go after the equal opportunity from the employment?
It's an EEO complaint.
Yeah,
they call it an EEO complaint. That's right. Okay.
And so they're going after the insurance companies to actually pay up on this. Because if someone was enslaved back then, those businesses took out insurance on those slaves.
Just like you got to take out insurance on property.
Yeah. And right now, when you're working specific jobs, everyone must have insurance.
That's right.
They don't allow you to keep certain jobs, most of them, without having insurance. The company makes you pay that out of pocket without even asking you. They just gonna put it on your check.
See, this is gonna open up a can of worms. I'm trying to tell people they need to look at this.
So this is the information that they're going to go after, as far as it's not going to be your lineage. It's going to be, did you work for someone during that time frame, and did they take out an insurance policy on you?
Yep. And I told people the only way that you're going to verify if your family members were slaves was not by word of mouth, it's by paperwork. Okay. They will have indentures. I told you indentures is a contract. That's what that means. If you don't have any family member that has I'm talking about written indenture, that means they were not enslaved. That means they were not employed. Then you need to start taking a look at what did they do? What were they doing to survive? See, that's going, like I said, that's going to open up another can of worms, because the majority of your family members were landowners. Okay. Or it's multiple different jobs out there that happen, but a lot of our people were in business for themselves. I'm trying to, you're going to see it. So just like they said that the task force in California has to come up with and approve a plan on how so-called Black Californians will be able to prove their ancestry, good luck. Because there's only one way for you to do that. Ain't no getting around it. Ain't no taking no DNA tests. You're going to have to go right back to the paper trail of your individual family members. And I've been telling people this for years. It's not going to change. And if you want reparations, that's the only way that's going to work. You have to prove it on paper. See, right here it says that my grandmother worked on this plantation. This date, this time, you got to have it all. Otherwise, the government ain't going to go off of word of mouth.
But they're also looking specifically for Africans, because this bill details Africans.
Explain that.
That puts it back on the people that are strictly immigrants. Strictly immigrants. Because if they're writing up this bill and this information and this legislation, and they're putting it out as if they're only going to give it to African Americans, they're not stating in the legislation Black people. They're stating people from Africa. You're going to have to prove that you came from Africa.
That's what makes things even harder.
Exactly. That opens the door for actual immigrants that came from Africa, which are a lot of these pale faces.
Yep.
Woo! That brings it back to exactly how things like
the civil rights went the same way. They went straight to the whites.
What is this that people are getting? Like EBT, Section 8?
Yeah, what is it called? Welfare.
Yep, that brings it back to welfare that was initially created for pale faces. When they brought in these public housings, low-income housings, that was initially created for pale faces.
In order for them to get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it trickled down to everyone else. Because when they're dealing with African Americans, they're dealing with those people that can say right now they came from a different country.
Because the majority of the people that were already here can't prove that they came or their ancestors came from Africa. There's no record of that, guys. The record is going to reflect and show that we were already here prior to any African or any other immigrant arriving. And I dare you to do your genealogy. I dare you.
That also puts people in a bad position who say, well, I'm just going to hop on this bandwagon for the sake of getting some type of compensation, because now they're going to start claiming African on documents. Okay. Now what happens to their citizenship?
Null and void.
The moment they start claiming, a great majority of people, they're lining it up just for that. For you guys to claim that you're African on paper. So when they start shipping people out because they don't belong here, those people are going to be on the list.
I said this before.
You said it before with
DACA. With DACA. Yeah, DACA. Mm-hmm. I tried to forewarn them. That was years ago. Now, I remember something similar. I did a story on, I did that whole documentary on Asheville, North Carolina. And as soon as I explained in full detail everything, I even interviewed people out there, put that on YouTube, then YouTube had an issue with that, took it down. I had to end up making that one of the movies that's on my website. But in Asheville, North Carolina, I'm gonna say about 3 or 4 months after me releasing that doc, the reparations conversation started. And then the city created a community reparations commission, which was supposed to help the city make reparations for some of its so-called black residents a reality. Now, they still in plans with this. They plan to work with the community to pinpoint what compensation would look like. You can look this up. So it's not just California, it's North Carolina as well. See, but this is what I'm saying. You gotta pinpoint it. You can't you can't be like, well, yeah, my ancestors were slaves. Well, how do you know that? Well, my teacher told me. Because your grandparents and your great-grandparents, if they said they were working, that's when you can say, okay, well, they were enslaved, because enslaved means employment. But you still will have to prove it. You still will have to prove it. Okay? But that's the reason why I told y'all that slavery is not what they told us it was. It's totally different. It's employment. Hands down. And don't sit up there and go latch onto those stories saying that they didn't get paid. Because some people got paid differently. Keep in mind, we talking about 1863, 1865 was when it was so-called abolished. The Federal Reserve note ain't happened to the 1900s. So we ain't talking about no paper money anyway. Think about that. So how else?
They were involved in peonage. Peonage.
Talk about it, huh?
That means you work to pay off your debt. You know how we saw them, we would see movies when someone would come and eat and they didn't have enough money to pay. And then they would throw them a dish rag and say, okay, well, go wash the dishes.
Woo! I hope y'all listening.
That's how they were paying off their debt. back then with peonage.
Listen,
that's slavery. But some people had bad contract.
There we go.
Because
you gotta find out which one it was.
They may make them wash dishes for 3 months for one meal. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about that type of slavery, an unfair working condition, an unfair treatment. When it may only take you, a few days or a week. You only ate one meal.
And those that were insured were the people that were working in the farms, working in the fields, the sharecroppers. Now, if they were sharecroppers, yes. And don't forget that the so-called slave masters or the employer had to insure everything. Because if something went wrong, it was going to fall back on him or her. And it doesn't matter their skin complexion. If somebody got injured on that job, it wasn't going to fall on the person. It was going to fall on the employer. The so-called slave master. Y'all got to know about these terms. And that's how you can find out that a lot of them were insured through the banks. We do have a book coming out on this too, guys. Be looking out for this book. Okay? I'm not even going to state the name of the book, but just be looking for it very shortly. We're going to come out with a book on this within the next month or two. All right? People got to understand who should be held responsible, because we're pointing the finger at each other when we should point it right back on this federal government. It's a reason why they continuously want us to look at, we're going to propose this idea, and they're not acting on it for a reason. Well, what you trying to say, Dane? Are you trying to say you not down for I'm down for reparations, but I want it to be reality. And I'm telling you, the only way for it to be reality is this. You have to be real all the way around, the entire spectrum. So we can't put the blame on the governors. They're just the supervisors of each state. Well, who's in control of the states? And who's insuring them? Just like my wife said, these insurance companies did deals with these banks. That's who we should be coming after. And you know, those banks can't be banks without the federal government involved. They know what's up. It's just that a lot of our people don't, because they're masking it with stories like this, feeding you hope as if something's going to happen, feeding you hope. That this is what they do every time a political campaign arises. That's why I said it sounds political to me. With that that attorney said, the civil rights attorney, that sounds very political. We just got to get all the African Americans on board. What do you mean? You mean that okay? You give them something, they gonna be on board. But no, they want to continuously feed you hope.
Oh, they need to vote in.
They need to vote.
To be voted. Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Voted in.
Look
they
what
need to see
Obama
how
did.
many people are on board with it. Not necessarily going to receive something from it, but at least have a backing.
Look what Obama did. In order for Obama to get all of our votes, he gave us hope. That was his campaign. Hope. I'm trying to tell y'all, wake up. Get you a fresh cup of coffee. Make it as strong as possible. You have to wake up. They're doing the exact same moves. They don't care. They're not masking it no other way. We can see their steps before they even make them. That's why I said stop looking for a handout when we have to go get it ourselves. And it's not through this government when they are responsible. We have to go get it on our own. We have to do things on our own. Businesses, banks, jobs. I'm talking about some classes on how to build credit. All of this, we need it all. We're not getting taught a lot of this stuff in our schools. Here's why. because they don't want you to excel. They just want you to be the consumer. They don't want you to be the breadwinner. That's keeping you down. And even immigrants get more opportunities than us. Still, ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And by the way, this task force in California, making it sound like it's a whole force of them. It's only 9 members. And it was appointed by that governor, Newsom. And they only tasked with representing the interests of communities of color throughout the state. They can't speak for us. Only we can speak for us. Because immigrants, once again, gonna be upset when we state that they weren't here during that time period. So they're not gonna be down for you to get any form of reparation. They're not gonna have your best interests. But guess what? They still gonna be nosy and try to find out what you're doing. So they can do anything that they can to stop it. And you know how our people act. We always battle against each other, taking some other stranger's word for it. It's time to stop it. And appoint our own governors and our own task force. It ain't hard. If they could do it, we could do it. What are we waiting for? Somebody unforeseen to come down here and save us? How long we gonna wait for that? You much rather go to your grave thinking that's always gonna happen? Or would you much rather get some changes done now? Go ahead, hon.
Okay,
Listen, because you know when I talk about this topic, man. Go ahead, hon.
This task force is basically implemented to study specific things, okay? And I'm gonna just list some of these things that they're gonna be studying. The institution of slavery, including both the transatlantic and domestic trade that existed from 1565 in colonial Florida and from 1619 to 1865 inclusive within other colonies that became the United States. And that included the federal and state governments that constitutionally and statutorily supported the institution of slavery. Now, with me thinking about this and with them stating all of this information, we know that California is all the way on the West Coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this state in particular one of the, I know you mentioned North Carolina, but they're like in the forefront right now. Think about slavery, how they said it existed and all of that. What does that even have to do with California?
Does everything happen on the East Coast?
How do you get these people, unless they immigrated to California on the basis, some people are going to use on the basis of discrimination. That's another reason why they had to include that. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Unless they immigrated through discrimination, what does California have to do with North and South and civil rights? Or because Africans or Caribbeans?
Africans and Caribbeans are out. But a lot of our people came from the South and the East by way and to the West by way of the 1830 Indian Removal Act. So did they just admit who these so-called African Americans are being in California? Because I want anybody to name a slave master, so-called slave master, that had 5 to 10 slaves in California during that time period, off the top of your head. And see how they always wanted to include California in the wars, but they weren't even a part of the 13 colonies at all.
I just thought that was odd with all of that taking place. You would think that the original 13 colonies, alleged 13 colonies, would be the ones doing the study.
They telling on themselves. They're telling on themselves. Talking about something they about to do a study on the transatlantic. Okay. What you gonna do? Pull up slavevoyagers.org? Cause ain't no names up there. There's all numbers, man-made. Yeah, man. We got a lot of work to do. And we can't let no strangers tell us any different. We know who we are. We've been here because we were always here. So yeah, I mean, if you want reparations, I do too. But we're gonna have to go about it a different way. We can't rely on these government task force to do what we should be doing. Cause still they gonna ask you to do your genealogy anyway. They should, cause how else you gonna prove it? I mean, unless they gonna open up a door in which they not, you know, they not gonna open up no door and say, hey, just say that your ancestors been here. Walk in the door right there, take that piece of paper, sign it, you gonna get reparations. The government ain't having that. So if y'all wanna get together, like I said, we only need 13%. And I'm gonna repeat it again, we only need 13% of our people to get together to get some stuff done for ourselves. We don't need the government involved. I mean, because I'm telling you, waiting on the government gonna be generations. Once again, John Conyers did a HR 40, and that was just a study, just like how they doing now in California, to study reparations, proposals, and a study to what happened to our ancestors here. And that's all my channel has been about. Like, they just want to feed you hope. Stop falling for it. Let's make it a reality now. All right, I'm done.
Watto, everyone. We love you guys.
We'll see you next time. And I'm Dane Calloway, and you know what I'm here to do. I'm just here to make you think.